sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm actually in transit, so in case my modem died, so I just log on from the car. So just go on, sir.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome for joining us on the second day of the seven-part series for DP600. We are currently trying to cover the syllabus and all the nitty-gritties of preparing for the DP600 Microsoft certification exams on analytics engineering on Fabric. And for last week, we were able to successfully um, understand the foundation. We set up an account. We also were able to quickly look at, just a moment, screen. We were able to quickly look at how to create an account on Azure, how to set up a Microsoft and Fabric account. Beyond that, also, if we are not able to get through that, I think you can just signify in the group chat, and the admin, Mr. Rashid, will help set up an account for us so that we can use that essentially for the class. It promises to be a practical class. We want everybody to have both the resources, the links, and by all means, you can always unmute and ask questions as we go along the line. So at any point in time, you can raise up your hands and would get to answer the question. Okay, so we talked about Lakehouse, what the foundation of a Lakehouse is within the context of my Microsoft Fabric, how it's a combination of both a file storage system, right, and an SQL endpoints, right, an SQL endpoints which you can use essentially to write SQL queries, T-SQL in this case, against your files that are stored in Delta format, right? So we will continue from that in a practical session. But before we go and do that practically, I want to talk about ingesting data with data flow gen 2. So we would explore the process of uploading a file, right? Converting that file into Delta Lake, right? Making use of the SQL analytic endpoints to query the data, do a few transformations, do some form of exploration. And when we are done with that, we'll go into using Gen 2, right? Which is also a transformation tool, right? To do some form of transformation. So if you are coming from the world of Power BI, then this interface we are currently seeing won't be extremely strange. This is the Power Query interface. It looks similar to the Power Query interface, right? But within the context of Fabric, it's called Data Flow Gen 2. So this has been enhanced, to be able to communicate with data warehouses, Lakehouse, SQL server, and different types of connectors that you have within the Fabric ecosystem, right? So it's a low graphical environment where you can do ETL solutions, meaning you can connect to source data, various data
Sorry.
sets from flat file.
Hello, Paul. Can anyone hear
Yes,
me?
yes, we can
Hello,
hear you.
Paul.
Yes, we
Okay.
can
Are you
hear you.
sharing your screen? Are you
Yes,
sharing
I'm
your
currently
screen?
sharing my screen. Yes.
Oh, you are? Okay. All right.
Okay, can others confirm if they can see my screen? So
So
hopefully it's
I
not
can't see.
Adrian.
So I need to leave, come back.
Okay. But can
I'll
others
leave and
just
come back.
raise your hands if you're able to see my screen?
Yeah, we can see your screen as a poll.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, so with the data flow Gen 2 interface, we are able to connect to data or different data sources. We're able to extract data. We're able to transform them, and that's what you see us do, where we do different types of transformation within this interface. So you either do it through the graphical view, right, where you are seeing different workflows happening, or you are doing it, using some of the commands that you have, right, on this top ribbon. So you transform the data, and the moment you are done, you can decide on loading the data in any destination, either in a warehouse or back to a lake house, as the case may be. So data flows run independently, right? So there is, or as an activity within a pipeline. So it means that you can just set up a data gen 2 to run independently, right? You can just build that data flow running independently, or say you have a pipeline that you've defined that is doing multiple activities. You can embed the data flow gen 2 activity right within your pipeline, and then it runs through and perform what needs to be performed. At the end of the day, right, one of those things you'll be doing is to be building pipelines. You'll build pipelines, maybe the medallion architecture, and we have different steps all along the process. So you see how we are building activities, we are building different products, or adding different items in our pipeline until we get the final results. So let's look at some of the benefits of the Gen 2, data flow Gen 2. So it allows us to be able to do self-service capabilities, optimize performance and data flow, right? If we have very complex processes, right, it can help us simplify them, right? Then for data analysts who also are not very heavy on writing Python, writing SQL, they can make use of this graphical-like interface to do different types of complex calculations. And if you also want to do slightly go a bit above, if you need to write any M language, right, you can do that. So one thing you also need to understand that every single step that you create or you run within the data flow gen, so is generating a respective M language code, right? So if you are familiar with the code, you can make changes accordingly. You can add, you can remove, you can update, as the case may be, right? It also ensures consistent quality of data, to enable cleaning and transformation of data. Now, the beauty of this is that each step and transformation you take are recorded, meaning that you would always be able to leverage on that created steps. So if you have, say today you had 10,000 records, tomorrow you add 20,000 records, you do not need to create those steps all over. You would still reuse what you've created before, run through those processes, and give you your desired output. So it's a create once and reuse approach. And limitations, right? So this is not a total replacement for a data warehouse. They have two different functional use. Data warehouse is for storage of structured and semantic data. Data flows are just simply ETL tools that are used to do data transformation and loading. It doesn't support row-level security, right? And then a fabric capacity workspace is always required for you to run the data flow Gen 2 workload. So let's just quickly look at the different sections and areas within the interface of the Gen 2, right? We have the Power Query ribbon, as you can see on top here, where you have number 1. So these are all the different activities. Each one of these icons are different transformations that you can carry out, either in terms of cleaning, augmenting, updating, appending, extracting. You have different types of activities here. You can do core transformation activities. You can do add column, activities. So all these typically exist within the Power Query ribbon. You also have number 2, the query pane. So queries also can be related to tables. They become tables when you load them into either your data model, your Lakehouse, or whatever. But at this point, they are queries because you can define a connection. When you define that connection, you either write your SQL script or it's just simply a connection. That connection gives you an output. The output is a table, right? So that table is referred to as query here, right? So you can ingest as many queries or as many tables from your source. You can import them into your data flow Gen 2. So once you are done with that and you intend to carry out your transformation, you have this diagram view, number 3, the diagram view, right? So you can leverage on this diagram view to see all the different transformations happening, right? So you can keep adding the different transformations and you'll be seeing them graphically, right? Number 4 is the data preview. So this is where you are seeing, as you are carrying out this transformation, you are seeing the representative impact on the data in this data view preview, right? So say you remove a column, you can see it immediately as the column is removed. You sorted it, you can see how the data is sorted. You extracted an information from a column, you're able to see that. And the last but not the least is the query settings. As I said, every steps, every transformation that you carry out within data flow, right, is recorded. And that's what you see under these applied steps. So you can see the first one is from the source. You promoted the first row as headers. It changed some data type. It appended some record, filtered. All these are recorded, right? They are recorded. So if you need to remove a step, you just click on the X, right? And then it goes back. So that's the beauty of it. And when you're done with this, you can decide which data destination do you want. Is it a lakehouse, is it a warehouse, and then go ahead and publish your data flow. And it runs through that data flow process or activity. So how do we integrate a data flow inside a pipeline, right? We can either use it as a copy data activity, right? We can incorporate data flows. We can essentially add notebooks. We can get metadata. We can execute scripts or store procedures. So the beauty of pipeline, as the word says pipeline, it means we are combining different things together in a pipeline, in something, that is continuous. So it has a source and it has a destination. But in between the source and the destination, you can decide to either introduce a copy data activity, you can incorporate a data flow, you can use a notebook to do some maybe granular transformations, right, or data cleaning, run it through it. You can get additional metadata, right, as the case may be, or you can just have a script that you are referencing and you add that into your pipeline. So this is just a quick recap on what we've been discussing over the last 20 minutes or so. The capabilities of Gen 2 within Microsoft Fabrics, how it serves as a solution for us to ingest and transform data, and then how we can use data flow Gen 2 in a pipeline. Okay, so I am going to move down to the practical session now so that we can really understand the whole process. So I shared with us 2 exercises over the course of the week, and this is to guide us on how we can create a lakehouse. We covered that a bit too in our last week class, where you log into your Fabric instance tenant. The moment you log in, you can go ahead, use the plus new workspace to create a new workspace. In this case, we have successfully created our workspace, right? And to create a lakehouse, you come to the new item. So you click on new item, and then you can search. Here, you can search for lakehouse. So if you want it bookmarked, you can click on this star button. It gets bookmarked. So all items that are bookmarked, you'll find them under the favorites. And that's why you can see it here. So you can just click on Lakehouse. Once you do that, it asks you to put in the name that you want. Once you put in that name, then you go ahead and create the pipeline. So as you can see here, the Lakehouse, as you can see here, we have successfully created a lakehouse. So currently we have 2 lakehouse here. I'm going to be taking out the first one. Yeah, so I'll just click on this guy and I'm going to delete. So that's how you can delete the lakehouse. Okay. So one thing that we need to understand that's very synonymous to a lakehouse is always the SQL analytic endpoints that come embedded with it. And that is why it is called Lakehouse, right? There is data lake context or concepts, and there's a data warehouse concept. We have brought in together features from a data lake, and that's what gives us the ability to interact with files. So I'm loading my Lakehouse now. So the moment it's done loading, that is what gives us the ability to add files, right? Add files within our Lakehouse. The Lakehouse is just like an engine sitting on top of a storage. The storage is one lake, right? So within one lake, we can upload and keep different types of data, right? So we upload the data. Now, the data warehouse part is what gives us the ability to convert that raw CSV file, Parquet file, Excel file into a Delta Lake table, which is what you see here, right? So this is an example of creating, right, an example of a Delta Lake table. You also use this icon to demystify or to identify that this is a Delta Lake table. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to clear up some few items here. And we are going to start this afresh. So just doing some house cleaning. Okay, so we'll be making use of the new file I shared. So just download that file from your WhatsApp to your PC. Now you can see within the Lakehouse, there are different items here. We have to start with a sample data. So if you're interested in using a sample data, say you don't have, you can leverage on this. You can also start with a data flow gen 2, which is what we just discussed. You can make use of a copy job activity, right? Or you can leverage on a new shortcut. So say you have a data stored in Azure Blob Storage, right? In S3 bucket in AWS, or a GCP storage bucket, right? You can simply get the links as long as it's publicly available. Get the links to those files and come here, making use of the new shortcuts and connect data into your Lakehouse. Now, what happens is the data is still resident in that source, but you are able to leverage on it, right, within your Lakehouse, right? So that also help solve the issue of always copying data across board. Is we store it one place and we use across our ecosystem. So that's also one of the advantages of the Microsoft Fabric Lakehouse. And so say you have an event stream, a Custo database, or an event stream that is currently generating stream data or live data, you can also connect that and ingest the data into your Lakehouse. So at the moment for us, we're starting from the easy part. We are going to ingest our data. The file is Superstore Sales Dataset 1000. So I'm just going to click on Open. So I'm going to upload that file. Yes, so once the upload is successfully carried out, you can see the checkbox says we have successfully imported data into our Lakehouse, right? We are going to do some renaming. So let's try and rename this. So we will leave the extension. The extension is .csv, comma separated value. So we will leave that, and we will just keep the superstore_sales CSV as the name of this file. So what we've successfully carried out so far is we have now gotten our data, we've stored it in our Lakehouse. Now, we cannot essentially query this data, right? Because this data at this point is just a file, right? We cannot query it. The way we can be able to query it, manipulate the data, exploit it, right, is if and only if we convert the data, right, into a table. And this is the process where we'll be converting it from a CSV file to a Delta Lake table. We can also view the data that we just uploaded, right? So we only can do view activity. So you can see how it looks like. We can view it as a table or we view it as a file. So in case we want to, so you can see it even as a file, there are a couple of things that have not been handled. You can see that the first row is not the header, right? And all this is just as a result of the fact that this is a CSV file. So if you click on first rule as header now, then you can see it has automatically promoted the first rule as header. Then we can now see, accordingly with those headers. Okay, so that's that. Let's go back to the file. I don't know if we have any questions. If there are any questions, you can take them. If not, I'm going to go back. So at this point now, I'm going to click on load tables, right? And when I click it as load table into a new table, so it's asking us what's the name of the table. Yes, we want it to be superstore underscore sales. So this time I will just call it as raw. I'll put raw in front, raw. So this is a raw data because we will still go through the process of trying to denormalize this data. It's a flat file that contains data on products, on sales, financial data, customer, and region or location. So also having proper naming conventions for your file also is a good best practice, right? So this is also one of the best practice on your landing zone, mostly your on your bronze layer. We'll talk about medallion architecture in the course of the class. Your first place, the first location where you keep your file can be referred to as the naming convention you can adopt for that can be raw. So this is the raw file. Okay, so we'll call this raw. And yes, we wanted to use the first row. So we'll use header for column names, right? So it's the first row as header. It's going to promote that. And because it's a comma separated value, CSV, right? The separator is comma. So which is right. So let's click on load. And then you can see in a few seconds, it's going to load that data, right? So when we come under the tables, we're expecting us to see a new delta table created for us of that raw file, that CSV file that we imported into our Lakehouse, right? And here we go. So as you can see, we now have the delta table created. And if I expand it, you can see it's also smart enough to recognize which data types are there. Some of the data are still reading, what's the word now? Text string. We can always transform all of that, when we are doing our data flow activity. So we'll see how we'll be able to make those changes and so on and so forth. Okay, so that is that part. We can see how we've successfully converted our raw file into our data lake table. So this is also the get data that I described to us the other time. We can also decide to create a new semantic model. So semantic model is just simply a Power BI model, a model, as the word says, semantic, where you use to create Power BI. You can only create Power BI reports and artifacts based on a semantic model. Right, so that's that. We have data agents within, not within the scope of this training, and we have the one lake security and so on and so forth. Then one very important part for exploration, right, is we can come to this top right bottom part, and then you can see the different options. So we can either use Notebook to analyze, either using Python or Spark. You can use the SQL analytic endpoints. You also have the ability for the event house endpoint. But we are going to focus on the SQL analytic endpoints at this point. So let's go ahead and click that. So this loads and take us to a new experience. So this is the SQL analytic endpoint experience. Now, if you take notes, there has been a slight change, right, in the information we are seeing on the left-hand side. So what we were seeing before was table and files in the Lakehouse experience. But now that we are in the Explorer for the SQL analytic endpoint, we are now seeing the data in a database structure. So now you can see schemas, right? So this is the DBO schema and some other schemas for system activities. You also have security where you can see DB roles, right? And this is where different queries that you create would be stored accordingly, right? Let me just do some screening here. Okay, so if we expand on DBO, by default, every data you create, every delta table you create in your Lakehouse will by default appear under the DBO schema. So take note of that. And you need to expand your tables. So when you expand your tables, you can then see. So you can see that we now have that table, right? We are still within the Lakehouse, but only we are using the lens of the SQL analytic endpoint to interact with our data. So if you just click on it, it loads, right? And then you are able to see the data also in a tabular format. So you can see here, let's just understand this data. So it's a data that contains sales data. So you can see there's the order date, there's the ship date, there's a customer column. We also have the first column is the order ID, right? Order ID. So it means that this is the transactional data platform. But within that data also, we have information on manufacturing, product name, segments, category, subcategory. All this data looks very relatable. They are data that has to speak to the product that is being sold, right? Then we now see region, zip, city, states, country. All these two can be grouped as location-based data, this file, right? Because there's a hierarchy existing here. We can say we have the region, or we say we have the country first, then we have the region, then we have the states, then we have the city, then we have the zip. So that's like the hierarchy that exists, within this data. We would further understand and see how we can break this in the course of the class. And then we now have our quantitative data. So discounts, profits, and quantity, sales, and profit margin, all speaking to the transactional elements of the data sets. So this is us exploring. We can also now write SQL. So let's use this helper function to select the top 100. So if I click on this, it's going to generate the SQL script, right, to display the top 100 records within this data, right? So as you can see, select top 100. It's listing out all the columns, right? And then you can see the from taking this from this table. And if we go down, we can see here too, there are 19 rows, 100 records that is currently being displayed. So that is one way of creating an SQL script. You can also decide to create views. So say in this case, as I said, what I want to do, I want to probably create a distinct so let's focus on the product here in this case, manufacturing, product name, segment, category, and subcategory. Say I want to create like a distinct dimensional table for this guy. One of the things I can easily do is we can do that with SQL. So let's see, I just copy out or cut out these records. So I have the manufacturing. So this is the highest level of the data. I have next the segments. So I'm going to bring segments immediately after my manufacturing. Okay, so we have category, subcategories. So I'm just going to take out the products from here and I'll put it immediately after the subcategory. So I take out all these other records. So if I run this query, you see we are selecting, still leveraging on all the records that we have, excuse me, within this data set. So if I run this, we can see it's still giving us 1,000 records. But this is not what I actually want, because I only want a single occurrence of products, to be displayed in this case, where we can use it essentially as a dimensional table. So how do I quickly address that? I would introduce the function of distinct. You can see distinct, right? So I would apply that. Then I would run my query one more time. And you can see the number of rows we now have. So from 1,000 records that we now have only 45 records, because it's giving us only a distinct representation of our product. And then we can now see the respective subcategory, category, segment, so on and so forth. Let's say we order this, order by. So I'm going to order in an ascending order. I want it to start, from this. So instead of me also using the names, I can use positional references. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So this is 1, the first column, the second column, the third column, the fourth column, the fifth column. So it's going to try and do that in an ascending order sequentially. So as you can see, so Apple first, then Breville, and so on and so forth. So you can see it has fully sorted it. So then you can see how everything typically looks like. So one of those things we're going to try and do now is to see how we can create a view, right? We are looking at from the perspective of an SQL analytic endpoint. So one of the things we can do is to also create a view. So I've created this. I like this. I want to be able to reference it, right? So a view is instantaneous. It's not totally storing that record. It's like, as the word says, view. It's just a snapshot of the query you've applied, right, that you can reuse any other time. So in this case, how do you do that? Create view, right? Then you put in the name of the view. So in this case, also as best practice, for easy identification, you can use annotations like VW, small letter VW, which is just a short form of view, underscore, right? Raw products. So products. And the other keyword is as, right? So I'm creating this view named VW raw products, right? As, and then it's referencing this SQL query. But one thing you need to understand is that when you are creating a view, it does not allow ordering. You cannot use the order function, right? You cannot use it when creating a view. So what I can do is I can easily come here and comment it out. So using 2-, right, comment out a particular code. So that's how you get to comment. So I'm just going to run this command. I want you to watch out here. So you can see under the DB, we have tables. Under views, there looks to be nothing because we've not created any view. So let's go ahead and run this script. And lo and behold, you can see we have successfully created our view. If I click on this, it loads into a different page, and then you can see. So this is a snapshot of the view we just created. It's also slightly different from product, our core big table, we wrote data. So you can see this contains everything. And this is a snapshot of the record based on transformation. So at this point, you see, we can do different types of activities here. So this is using the SQL script, T-SQL script. If you are a user who prefers to use a different type of tool, maybe something a bit more graphical, then you can come here. We also have the option of visual query. So I'm going to click on that. Okay, so let's give it a few seconds and then just tidy up a few things here. So I want to conduct a few activities, right? Cleaning activities or transforming activities using SQL. So what they've just done is that SQL is still what is behind the scene. As you can see here, if I click on view SQL, it's still a select. We are still doing a select from the table. But as I begin to apply different transformations in this graphical or visual view, right, it would also be respectively writing those queries. So this is also one of the ways you can use to learn a bit of SQL, you know. So say in this case, we only want to what's the word now here? Work with the columns, right? These state related columns. Right? So we can decide to say, okay, fine, come here, we click on this plus sign, and then we'll see a drop down. So in this drop down, I want to choose the columns I want. Yeah, so I can click on choose columns, right? Or I can decide to remove other columns. So if I click on remove other columns, you can see because this column was the only column that was selected, every other column has been removed. So if I come back here and right click, I can delete that step. So as you can see here, too, it's also very slightly similar to the data flow gen 2. But unlike the data flow gen 2, that is creating M language scripts behind the scenes. But in this case, we are actually generating SQL T-SQL scripts. T-SQL scripts are being generated. So you need to take note of that. So let's choose our columns. In this case, I simply want, say, I want my region, I want my zip, I want my city, I want my state, I want my country, right? I just want these four guys. Click on OK, right? I'll click on OK. And as you can see, I have applied that step. Let's go back and click on the view SQL, and you can see. So you can see now that it has streamlined that query. I just did the select and I get. So at this point too, I can also drag and drop within this interface. So I want to sort now in this case. I want it to follow the hierarchy country first, right? Then region. Then it does move zip to the last part. Then state before city. So it follows the hierarchy. This is the highest hierarchy, country to region to state to city and to zip. And you see, as I was doing this reordering, it had gone ahead to add a reordering column, right? A transformation here. Let's see how that look like on the back end. Yeah, so it just has followed that order. So we have country, region, state, block. It has followed that process for us. That's reordered it for us. That's fine. You get that's a perfect example. If you want to save this as a view also, you can decide to save it. So say we want to call this view w underscore raw region. So let's say we call it region. You can do that and you can see it's writing the SQL script for us. Similar to what we wrote. I will just click on OK. So in a few seconds, you can see how we use SQL script for one, and we use in another a different you get in another we did a different script. Okay, so that's that. I don't know if you have any question. If you have any questions so far, you can signify or you can ask questions. Okay, so I'm going to continue. So that is how to essentially use the visual query. You can also decide to, or maybe you prefer to use notebook, right? You prefer to use notebook. You can also launch a new notebook, right? And write your SQL scripts within that notebook. So you can see it has loaded the experience of the notebook. We are within one link. we can see the Lakehouse that we created. We can see the schema. So you can see it's still giving us that SQL analytic endpoints in experience, right? So we can see our views that we created. We can see the table, right, that we have here. So here also, as you can see, the options here is T-SQL. So we are within the T-SQL coding language. So here we can also as well write our scripts. Right, and reference accordingly so this the name of the database, right? Then the schema, which is the best practice DBO, right? Then the name of the table, which is raw underscore super, and that's it. So if I run this, I can do that by clicking on this run cell, this play button. It runs that query, and then it gives us a result. So here, if you want to download, you can always download. You know, if you want to save as another table, you can do. If you even want to open it in Excel, you have the ability. So if you need, it depends on the experience, what you are trying to do. So say you are trying to make a lot of sense with the data, do some queries, do some exploration, spend a bit of time. This might be the place where you come to do this type of exploration. So you can do that. You can also come to new charts, right? It leverages on your data and quickly comes up with a few types of charts, suggested charts, right? So you can even just use this on a high level to evaluate some of the data that you have within your data set. So all these are random, different data types. If you want to create something custom, you can also do that, right? We can create a custom chart as the case may be. You can see build your own. So you can click here, choose. There are different types of bar charts here that you can use to explore your data. So that is the third way you can explore the data that you have within your Lakehouse using the SQL analytic endpoint. Okay, so what we are going to do now is to head back into our workspace. So I'm going to head back into our workspace. Okay, so we can either do that from within the experience of the Lakehouse. We come here, right? So we can come here, we can create a new data flow, right? We create a new data flow. So what we are going to try and do now is to create a superstore data flow. So I'm going to create a superstore data flow. We can create. Okay, so let's see what it takes. Let's see how we can use the data flow to carry out a field transformation. Okay, so we are currently in the experience, as you can see, same Power Query, but behind it, the technology is leveraging on the data flow gen 2. At this point, before we can do anything, we obviously need to connect to our data. We need to connect to our data. So this is the destination here, right? So here we can either leverage on an existing data or we import the data directly. So let's just quickly speak through under the home page. You can see we have different types of information here. So we have information about these are the recent things that was carried out. You know, you can also decide to go to all. You can explore one league, right? This can take you to. We are currently in the get data experience. So if I click on this one league catalog now, it will look through all the different artifacts that we have within the tenant. So in this case now, we are working in this location. This is the workspace. Location is referred to as workspace, right? So if I click on this guy, right, I'm connecting to that particular Lakehouse now. As you can see here at the bottom, it's trying to establish a connection. Once that is done successfully, you can now see different options. So you can see that data that we uploaded, the raw superstore sales, we can see it. So in this case, I'm going to click on this checkbox. Click on this checkbox. You can see it's referencing that data. You can see that data here, and I'm going to click on create. So it's going to establish the connection and create a new query for me. As you can see, the new query is raw superstore data. So I am using my data flow to connect to within my Lakehouse to connect to the raw data that I imported. And I'm going to carry out a few transformations here and see how we can, use the Power Query or the data flow gen 2 experience. Okay, so you can see the file. So say in this case now, these are dates. These are date columns, right? So we shouldn't be using string. You see that we now have more flexibility in this case, right, to apply transformations that are more granular. We can do all of that in this case. So the date has been formatted appropriately. All these other informations are fine as text format. Yes, this is a number, right? A whole number data type. And as for the other ones too, they look right. So you can see the first transformation that I carried out manually, and you can see it has added the steps here. Okay. We have the transformation tab. So if some of the transformations you want to carry out are not visible on this interface, you can come to the transformation tab, and here you can see, so you can do group by, first shoulders, headers, and a whole lot of other transformations, right? You can come here to the add column. These are the add column related transformations under the view, right? So you can decide to change the view accordingly. We have three layouts. We're currently under the query settings view. You can change to the diagram view. So you can see here in this diagram view, similar experience that we saw in the visual query editor experience, but here it's more granular. And as you can see, the different steps that I've taken, this step I've taken, you can see how it looks like here. We also have the script view. So let's use this advanced editor. So all those transformations that we're doing, this is what they call M language, right? So all those steps, you can see the one I just did last is change column type, and they change other dates and then ship dates, change them into a date, the type, change it into date type. So that's that. So yeah, so that's we have the schema view too. We can see the experience of the schema view. We can see the data view, right, and so on and so forth. So we can always explore all these different experiences as we go and when we're doing our practice. Okay. So let's quickly do one thing. Let's just in this case just do some cleanup. In this case now, I only want to leave a few columns. So I'll choose columns, my transactional data. So if I come here, I'll leave the order ID, order dates, ship dates, the customer, yes, is fine. I'm going to take out, okay, so I'll leave the product name. I'll leave the product name. I'll take out the segment, the subcategory. I'll take out this. I'll leave the zip. It's the smallest guy that we can use. So I'll take out state and country, and I'll leave all this. So what I'm just trying to do is to map out the transactional data. We've created dimensional data in the essence. So with our product dimension that we created, right, we'll be able to join to this table on the product name. With the one for the region, right, we'll be able to use the zip, which is the smallest hierarchy, to join to this table, and all these are quantitative data. So I've just carried out a few transformation here, right, and then we can see this. So we can as well rename accordingly. So in this case, I can come here and rename my query, right? So rename this and call this, so let's call this, say, fact. Okay, so still raw, at yeah, superstore. So I just okay, let me just remove the row from there since I've processed this. So fact superstore sales that are right. So once I do that, I've saved that. Right. So I'm going to switch back to the just uncheck from the diagram view, and then I can see. So you can see different you can see. So this destination, if I want to send it back into the Lakehouse, I have the ability to do that, right? So let's go back to the home page. So here also, if we had a destination or multiple destinations available within this workspace, we can as well just send this data, into that place. So at this point, we're done. I'm just going to click on save and run. So it will save all the steps that we've carried out. It will save them, right? And it would have them saved within the Lakehouse. So I'm going to close this card and close since I've saved. Okay, so let's head to our warehouse. So as you can see, the Superstore data flow that was created, this is it. So the experience where we were working on the Gen 2 and all that was within this interface. So if I head back into our stuff, is there. So one of those things we are going to try and do now is I want to store the data, the query, the transformation I just did. I want to store it actually in a data warehouse, So as we've said, we've been working within the interface of the Lakehouse. But what we are going to do now is to ensure that we save the data after it has been transformed into a data warehouse. So I'm going to head back into our workspace, and I'm going to click on new item, right? And I'm going to search for warehouse, right? So we can see warehouse here. So I'm going to click on warehouse, and I'm going to call this sales warehouse. Okay, sales warehouse. So yeah, we're saving it into the same workspace, and I'm going to click on create. Okay. So one, you probably are seeing this experience, and some might be asking, oh, this experience almost looks like the SQL analytic endpoint. Am I correct? Some might be curious enough to say, oh, but one thing you need to understand is that they are different. The interface might be similar, but they are different in terms of functionality. The SQL analytic endpoints, you cannot use SQL to do any data manipulation features. So things like creating a table, right? You can create views, but tables cannot create because it does not hold the whole SQL context. It just has the SQL context of you being able to interact with your data, writing SQL, creating views, and doing some other transformations. So the transformations that you saw are even very, very limited. They are very limited within that experience. But within a data warehouse, you can define, right, data copy activities. You can create, data flow gen 2 activities. You can practice even with sample data, write your T-SQL directly, or you set up a database project, right? So this gives you the full functionality of a data warehouse, a full SQL database, right? So you can see here we have the option to ingest data from a copy job, ingest and transform with data flow gen 2. We have also the visual query, right? So the same experience we've gone through. We can see here, so we can even easily just make use of some of these. So I can also create a new schema. So I want to create a new schema here. I can just come here and say sales. In this case, I want it to be sales schema. So say everything that we do, right? And after we have transformed a sale in the sales schema, I can come and create this. Once I run this command, you can see to add a new schema. You can see sales, right? So you can create a table, you can create a view table value, and so on and so forth, right? So this is to monitor your data warehouse. You can see all the different transactions here we'll be reading on this level, right? So if you also have the ability to open this project either in Visual Studio Code or SQL Management Studio, as the case may be. Okay, so we want to, the data we have processed, right? That data that we have worked on, that we have worked on within our data flow, we want to ingest that data into our warehouse. So let's go back and head over to our workspace, right? And let's launch our data flow gen 2. Let's launch it. Okay. So we would try in this instance to set up the destination, right? So let's go ahead and add a new destination, right? So I'm going to click on the plus sign. You can see I removed the default one that was there, and I am adding a new destination in this case. So I'm going to click on the One Lake catalog. So it's going to list out all the different artifacts that we have. And you can see the sales warehouse, right? You can see the sales warehouse that we just created. So I'm going to click on that. Let's give it a second for it to load the metadata. And you can see. So now we have the different schemas that is showing here. So as I said, we created a new sales schema. I'm going to add that to this schema. So I'm going to click on this. So it's going to make use of that. And the name of the table is going to be fact sales. So I'll remove this superstore here and just call it fact sales. Right. And I'll click on next. Okay. So it's just asking for some settings on the destination. So anytime it's doing an update, should it keep existing data or new data? Should it append or replace? Right? In this case, replace, because I wanted to do a full refresh of the data in case there are any records that might have changed in between the data based on the transformations that we carried out. Yeah, it's using either a dynamic, we want a fixed schema, and this is also just looking at the columns that we have here. So we can also at this point make changes to the destination data type. So you can see the data type here. This is the source, it's text, and destination is text. Date, which is fine. Customer, all these are dates, and all these are whole number, decimal, and so on and so forth. So this setting is fine for us. So let's go ahead and click on Save Settings, right? So we would allow you to save that settings and then quickly run the copy process. Okay. So let's just refresh. We're refreshing our data. Okay. So let's go ahead, save and run. So we would save and run. So it would go. What's happening behind the scenes? It will go and fetch the data that we have in the Lakehouse, using the data flow, run through this true transformation, and then load this data into our data warehouse. All right. So let's go and validate that that is fine, that we have the data sitting in our data warehouse. So I'm closing out of the data gen 2 experience, right? So we are back to our sales warehouse experience, as you can see here. So I am simply just going to do a refresh. So I'll do a refresh of the sales warehouse, just so in case it has not picked it up. And I'm going to expand on my sales, expand on my tables. And here we go. Can you see? Now our data is successfully sitting inside our data warehouse. All right, not 10 records, 11 columns, right? So you can see some of the metadata that we have, right? And create a select from. So these are just some help actions. This is a high level view of the data structure, right? The data type, the column name, and so on and so forth. So we can see all of that here. We can check out the data preview of the data that we have here, right? Which is fine. I'm also just going to use this helper to set up a query that runs its 100 records. So you can see how we have successfully created the data lakehouse. We've imported data. We've converted the data from a raw CSV file into a data lake table. We have also gone ahead to use several means of writing SQL, right? Either through the notebook, writing T-SQL by ourselves, or using the Visual Query editor. We also went through the experience of creating a data flow gen 2. And with that, we carried out a few transformation, Power Query transformation. Then we went ahead and set up our sales data warehouse, and then successfully imported our data into the warehouse. So I don't know if there are any questions. Do we have any questions? Do we have any questions? Okay. So I'm going to head over to my slide, and we would quickly talk about the concept of data warehouse. Right, we'll talk about the concept of data warehouse. So let me launch my slides. Please, I want this class to be participatory. Do we have anyone who is currently following us through as we are running through this session? Are you currently facing any challenge? Do you have any question? I'm just trying to reiterate so that we know people are following along with us. So you can always unmute, give a feedback.
Hi, Mr. Paul. In my case, I'm just listening in. I'm fairly new, so these terms are pretty new to me, but I'm getting some concepts okay.
Okay, thanks for that feedback.
And I imagine you had a class last week, do you?
Yep.
Because I wasn't here last week, so I think this is my first class with you. So in my case, just listening in to get a few concepts.
So sorry for taking you back. I'm struggling to hear you clearly. If you can speak a bit louder or more.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Did you take a class last week?
Yes, there was a class last week.
Okay, I wasn't here. That's the point I'm making. I wasn't here, and a few of these concepts are new to me. But in my case, I'm just following to get concepts, and I watched the video after this and try my hands on it. And if I do have a problem, is it okay to get in touch with you?
Okay, that's fine. So to just also manage expectations more, we spent a bit of time on the theory for last week, so we don't really do so much practicals, and the practicals that we did, I actually did take them all over again in this class so that we have that connected flow. So you are good to go to even start. You can just watch that of last week to understand some of the foundations, what is Lakehouse, what is Fabric, and so on and so forth. But for the core practical session, we started that today. So if you have been with us for the last 1 hour or so, you typically should have the foundation and the basis covered. So I think, as they say, practice makes perfection. So just sit down, watch, follow the instructions, and then you'll be able to do this on your own. I've also shared a link, right, on the WhatsApp channel that contains different labs. So there's a lab there. Let me just showcase that. There's a lab there that talks about how to set up. So yeah, this is the link. So you can see for DP600, we have different exercises. There are about 17 of them, right? So if I expand this 17, right? So discover and connect the data in one lake is one of those exercises you should take. Create a Microsoft Fabric Lakehouse, right? So one of the ones we'll be doing, spending a bit of time now, is this analyze data warehouse. So you can simply make use of this, right, to also get you started. And with the additional explanations I've done within this class, you should also be properly grounded.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so let's head over to a slide. So yeah, let's talk about data warehouse. We have successfully created our data warehouse.
Amy,
One of the
excuse me.
Yes, yes, please.
Hello. Okay.
Go on.
And please, if you have any questions, could you drop it on the Q&A? The chat room is not available, but you can use the Q&A to drop your questions. Pick it from there. You can always put up your hands also and ask questions or drop it on the Q&A. Thank you.
Okay,
Please carry
thank you,
on.
ma'am. Yes, thank you, Madam Franca. Okay, so we are moving on. So this is the highlight of what we want to look at over the next few minutes, right? How to get started with data warehouses, how to load data into a data warehouse, how to query a data warehouse, monitor a data warehouse, and secure a data warehouse, right? So a fundamental thing we need to understand, and this distinguishes a lake house from a data warehouse, right? Fundamentally, we can ingest data, that's moving data from any source system into our data warehouse, which is what we saw we did, right? We took data from a lake house and we added it into a data warehouse. We can store data in a format that is optimized for analytics. And this is very, very important. So exploring data, right, is slightly different. You can explore data through different unconventional means. But when you are tailoring a data product for analytics, you need to be very strategic and emphatic about how you store your data. So data that has to do, you see me why I was emphatic about changing a column that has date, right, from string to date. Because if I do not do that, if I begin to do some querying, right, or do some transformations, or try to do some analytics, build some analytics on top of that data, I would have issues. Things like time intelligence would not work because the data type is wrong, right? There are different skills and capabilities built around data types. So if you use a wrong data type for a particular data set, there's a high probability that your analysis will be wrong. So we need to understand that as foundational. Okay, we also have data processing, where you transform your data into a format that is ready for consumption by an analytic tool. So data processing is also important. As you can see, we process the data, we put it. Also within our data warehouse, you can still do additional processing. So say you do this processing, you can either create a stored procedure to handle that processing process or that transformation process, or you can do some scripts and create a view, which is a snapshot of the table reference that it has, and then it's giving you additional information that you can use for your analysis. Data analysis and delivery. So analyze your data, get insights, and most importantly, insights that are relevant for your business. So that is what a data warehouse is used for. Now let's understand the fabric warehouses, right? So all these, as I said, one lake is the foundational technology that warehouses most all of the solutions that we have within Fabric. So you can see within our own context, and similar to what we did, we called our sales lakehouse. We also created a warehouse and we called it sales warehouse, right? So you can have different types of lakehouse or warehouses within your workspace. And then based on the unified management and governance solution or technology of one lake, then you can now have all these different technologies sitting on top of them. So from the lake house to the warehouse to the KQL. So KQL means Custo Query Language. It is the language for interacting or analyzing streaming data. saved in a custom database. So anytime you hear streaming data, right, within Microsoft Fabric, it's usually stored in a custom database. And the language, the querying language used to query that database is also called custom, hence KQL.
Excuse me, Paul.
Yes, please.
We can still see your SQL query screen. Is that what you're sharing? You're sharing your
No,
slides.
I've moved on to the slides. Okay, so let me reshare. I have moved on to the slides. So let me reshare the slide. Confirm if you can see my slide.
What can you see?
Can you see
Sharing is
understand
fine.
Fabric warehouses?
I think the problem is the sharing is fine.
Can others see
Were you
understand
sharing your
Fabric warehouses?
slides?
Yes, I'm sharing my slides now. Okay, so are you able to see understand Fabric warehouses? Is that what you're seeing on your end?
Are you sharing now? I can't see.
Yeah, that's what's showing.
Can anyone see his slides?
Yes, sir. Yes. Well, in my case, I can.
Okay. Probably it's a network. It's a network thing.
Okay, I'll leave and come back.
Okay, that's fine. So so within this the Fabric experience, we have a single data lake. It's one lake. It is powered by Synapse Analytics, and on top of that, you can write your T-SQL. The also supports CSV, TSV, SQL, package format, and so on and so forth. All of that are supported within the platform. Okay. So how do we create a data warehouse in Fabric? You saw the experience. We navigate to the new item, right? You select warehouse, you put in a name, and then it creates for you a warehouse. Now, fundamentals of a data warehouse, and that's what distinguishes a Lakehouse. You notice in Lakehouse, we can have different types of file and all that. But the purpose of a warehouse is for us to structure our data. And for every relational database, right, for especially if you are building it for the purpose of analytics, you store your data either as fact tables, also known as transactional data, right, or dimensional tables, which is known as DIM or business entities. So let's break this down. If you notice, I excluded when I was working on the table that we inserted into the warehouse. There were some records I separated. Those I removed. Those records were records that should serve as the dimension. And I wanted to create a fact table, a transactional table. If you notice in that table, right, we have columns for order ID, we have columns for order dates. So it means that as the business is running on a daily basis, as the business transactions are happening, we are recording activities, information, and data for every sale. That serves as a fact table, transactional data, right? But when we refer to a dimensional table, is in that organization, they have different products, right? But per category, per subcategory, we have items. So there is, for example, a laptop, Series A, another laptop, Series B. Those are unique items. And in our dimensional table, we will record them as a single occurrence, as a single entity of that data in that dimensional table. So in a dimensional table, some of the attributes is that you will find out that you have one information, right? A single occurrence of that particular entity. And then other columns are providing descriptive informations, right? They are like metadata speaking to you. That's why in the product that we created, that view, we had a product, we had a subcategory, we have a category, we have even manufacturing, we had segments. All those are just giving additional context, which is the descriptive information, right? And they are usually smaller, right? They are smaller. Now, one thing that is very, very important is there has to be references, right? And the references are what we refer to as keys. So you can see here, it's common for a dimensional data to include two keys. There is a surrogate key and an alternate key, right? So what this just means is that the surrogate key typically is the key that is used. So there's firstly the primary key. The primary key is that unique identity for that data. You now have a surrogate key, which combines some unique attributes within that table that you can use to reference your fact table. Now, the alternate key now is an additional key that you can build off your primary key, right? That in case there are any issues with your primary key, you can alternatively use the alternate key for. So according to best practice, a dimensional table, right, can, right, is not a must, but can have surrogate keys, right, and alternate keys. And as for your fact tables, right, you would also have your primary key, right, and your foreign key. Your primary key and your foreign key. The foreign key in this case is, so when we are looking at this in a graphical way, I would also use that to explain. So, but what that simply means, the foreign key within your fact table is the one you will use to reference your dimensional table. So because it's relational, we need to create a relationship between these tables. We need to establish columns that we can use to create those relationships. So when you are doing that, you use your foreign key. So the foreign key is referred to as foreign key within your fact table, but is known as primary key in your dimensional table. So we'll still break that down. Don't worry, if it's not clear, don't worry, it will make a bit of sense as we go along the line. So special types of dimensional table, we have the time dimensions. This provide information about your time period or an event. So most times for analytics, it's always good to have like either a date table, a calendar table as the case may be, or a time dimension. We also have slow changing dimensions, right? SCDs, right? SCD 1, 2, 3, right? I'll just talk about a few of them. So this is dimension that tracks the changes, of your dimension, say over time, over the change of the customer's address, over the product price. Okay, yes. So let's use this diagram, right? So a data warehouse schema design. This is referred to as a star schema. You can see the star. So there's a guy sitting in the center. And what's it called? It's called the fact cells. And there are other guys, right, sitting on the different angles of the star, the dimensional data. So you can see the dimensional product, dim dates, dim customers, right, dim stock, dim employee, and in the center is this. So the keys, the relationship that we're talking about that we need to build will be established. The way we can establish this link is ensuring that there is an information here that also exists here. So we can join this guy to this guy. If we do not have that, then it's difficult for us to establish that relationship. And that's what defines the star schema. Okay. We also have the snowflakes, right? So there's a lot of levels, some information shared by different things, but it might make sense to us for us to also understand snowflake schema. So snowflakes in this case now, as you can see, that it's not straightforward. Yes, we have the center guy, but we also have some additional tables linked to a dimensional. So a dim table links to another dim table. You can also see in this case, this guy is linked to customer. Customer is linked to, so where this customer and dim store are still sharing the dim geography, right? And so on. So you can see it's structured like a snowflake. You can see the diagram behind it like a snowflake. And that's why it's called the snowflake schema. Okay. So how do we ingest data into data warehouse? We either make use of the Fabric pipelines. We make use of Fabric data flow gentry. This was what we did. We have cross database querying. All right, we can do that. We can also use the copy into command. So what this does that probably we have like a CSV file, we can use the copy into command and then have that data copied directly from that CSV file into a table within our data warehouse. So these are high-level ingestion data types that we have within a data warehouse. Clone tables. You can also clone tables. So you can do replicas of tables created by either copying the metadata while still referencing the same data within one lake. So you can do this for the purpose of deployment and testing. Instead of you having to go and create all over again, you can just use the clone features, right? In the case of data recovery, you can also use the clone features for that. Historical reporting also, you can essentially use databases that you've cloned to accomplish all these three things. Okay, so how do we query data here? We can either use SQL Server Management Studio, SSMS, is an enterprise tool that you can use to query data. We used to have Azure Data Studio. Yeah, it's still existing, but it's a product that is currently going into extinction. They are discontinuing it. So yeah, if you can still download it, fine. If not, the other alternative to using Azure Data Studio is Visual Studio. So you can just download Visual Studio and install the SQL Server extension, MSQL extension, and that will give you capability. So there's the extension for Microsoft Fabric, extension for SQL Server. So you can install that. That gives you capabilities to be able to work within interactively with Microsoft Fabric Data Warehouse. And with this query editor, you get to see code completion. You can see syntax highlighting, client-side parsing, right, and validation. So you can validate your scripts. You can see syntax highlighting. What that just means is that as you are typing, as you can see here, for the functions, you see them highlighted in blue. For names of columns, for some columns and names of tables, right? You can see the color, right? And then you can see red for some other types of function, how it is used. So that's what we call syntax highlighting and code completion. If you notice, most times I will just type one or two words and I'll use tab. So that ability is called code completion. Instead of me having to type everything completely, right? I'm leveraging on the code completion features. Yes, remember our visual query. You can also utilize that as we did. So you can manage your columns, filter columns, replace values, group by, and do some other transformations. So here, you can also build relationship. Those relationships are also what I was explaining, saying there has to be a reference, a key reference. So in your dimensional table, for example, you have a primary key, and the data is properly mapped also in your fact table where you have it as the foreign key. So you can use those keys to establish relationship between each other, and then you are good to go. Okay. So yeah, connect your dimensional table, your star schemas. You can drag and drop, and then within the model view, you can see how you can utilize that. So this takes us to the conversation around semantic models, right? So there is no how I would say the experience of Power BI or the data modeling experience that we have within Power BI or Microsoft Fabric Power BI experience is built on top of the relational technology that we have in data SQL data warehouse, right? The Microsoft SQL data warehouse. So you can leverage on these existing relationships, right? You can leverage on them and import that into your data model, your semantic data model, which is what we use within Power BI. So Fabric will automatically create a semantic model for you. As long as you've set up, you've cleaned up your table, you have your table, you've created the relationship. Those sets of relationship would also now be reused within your semantic model in Power BI. So as you can see here, these are different keys. So within your facts, that's exactly what I'm saying. So all these things we are seeing are called foreign keys. There is already a standalone customer table that has this key reference, but it also is existing within your fact sales order. And this is referred to as your foreign key. So you joining it together ensures that the relationship exists between your dimensional customer table, your dimensional product table, and then this is also to your sales order tables. Okay. So if we have any questions, please by all means just let me know, ask it. So the beauty of the Fabric warehouse is that there is a close integration between the warehouse semantic model and visualizing data. So you can easily, as you have your data fully formed and structured, right, you can model them, import it into your semantic model, and quickly build a Power BI report on top of that, right? So that's one of the advantages of this. And as you can see, this is data coming from your data warehouse, modeled, and then you are creating a report on top of that. So let's look at some of the things that we need to consider in terms of security that the data warehouse provides for us. So there's something called RBAC, role-based access control. So this means that we can define roles accordingly, add users to roles, and these users, we assume what has been defined within that role, right? What has been defined within that role. So we also have SSL encryption, that's secured we have SSL, forgotten the name of that, right? I think security layer encryption, right? So that is just showing that you cannot just connect to the data warehouse in an unsecured manner, right? SSL provides that security layer, end-to-end encryption of the data. So people cannot hack it. That's also one of the security features we have. We have Azure Storage Service encryption. We have Azure's Monitor and Azure Log Analytics. We also have multi-factor authentication. So in this case, we are not just only using your username and password. We are either using your 2FA app, or it will send you a notification on your phone. You need to click, you need to accept, and so to your email, you need to accept and all of that. And then you have the Microsoft Entra ID integration. So if you have single sign-on from your organization, you can just use that directly to interact with your Fabric warehouse. So let's quickly understand what are the differences between workspace and the item permissions. So within workspace, we store containers. It's a container, that stores related items. So you can do it like, for example, everything I want to talk about or I want to do within this DP600 class. You see, I created a workspace for it, so that as I'm creating everything, it's stored within that workspace. So it's not mixed up with other artifacts that I'm creating within my Fabric environment, right? And then there are 4 major workspace access. We have the admin, we have the contributor, we have the member, and we have the viewer. For the admin, he or she can carry out any activity, both create, delete, update, right? You can carry and read, can carry out any activity. For contributors, right, they cannot delete, but they can contribute, right? So it means they can create, they can read, they can update accordingly. Members also can do similar. There are slight differences between the member role and the contributor role, right? So the contributor role gives you can assign that to, say, the business user now, or the business executive. Then as for business user who typically, or maybe like your sales team, who typically are just supposed to read and use the filter, they read, just apply filters, you can give them the viewer role. But for those who still want to be able to access the report, add 1 or 2 things to the report, you can give the contributor roles. And for developers can be placed at the member role, where they're able to do all the read activities, the update activities, but they cannot delete. They cannot delete within that workspace. Okay. So let's talk about the different items that we have or that we can create within our workspace. We have Lakehouse. We've seen how that works.
Sorry, Mr.
We've tried out the way. Yes.
Based on your hierarchy, Is the admin contributor member viewer? Was the admin member contributor and viewer?
No, it's admin, contributor, member, viewer. So it follows that cadence.
Okay.
Yes, it follows that cadence. Yes. So Lakehouses, warehouses, semantic model for Power BI, reports, artifacts, dashboards should always also built on top of Power BI reports, or item level access within your workspace, such as your SQL analytic endpoints, also your real-time analytic endpoints. All of those things are different items that you can see within your workspace. Now, some of these items to now have some granular permissions or access, right? So things like read data, read all. There are also smaller item-based access that you can also control. So all of this is just ensuring that we build in a secured need-only access infrastructure. So informations, artifacts, items that users should not view or should not have exposure to, you can essentially limit them within the scope of these access controls. So those are the advantages of this. So let's just do a quick recap before we round off for the day. And so as we can see, we've gone through the practical session. What we just successfully did is to look at the theory. But when we come back next week, we would actually go through that process of building a data warehouse, as it were, set up our dimension tables and fact tables, see how we establish relationship between them. We would also look into, creating our semantic models and quickly come up with one or two reports, right? So we'll see how that works, and then talk about some other things within the class. Okay, so just to recap, we've been able to set up a data warehouse. We've understood high-level dimensional modeling concepts. We've got to understand how to create a data warehouse, how to ingest data, right? We've also seen how to query, visualize data. We'll see that practically. We also discuss semantic models and their purposes, and then how it also relates to you properly creating your star schema setup within your data warehouse, and how you can reuse that infrastructure across board. So from your data warehouse to your data model into your reports, right? How you can leverage on that. And then last but not least, how to secure your data warehouse. So I'll be stopping here, and I'm open to questions. If we have any question, please, by all means, you can unmute, you can talk, you can ask those questions. Apart from that, I would encourage us, the link has been shared on the WhatsApp group. Just navigate to DP600, and then you pick each one of the exercises. So you can click on this one now, for example. It takes you to the page. All you need to do is to read through, right? So you need to log into your workspace, right? You see the link, log into your workspace, and you see it's very visual. So just follow the steps one by one. So we intended to use this sales.csv file the last case, and it gave us an issue. I was thinking it was as a result of the setup but it wasn't. It was the data. That's why I have provided us with a new data set. So instead of you using this sales.csv file, use the data set I provided for you for the test. So just follow through how to create your Lakehouse, right? How to upload your CSV file, so ensure to run all these practicals. So you can just follow these steps one after the other, and you'll be able to catch up with us at the practical level. Thank you, everyone, for your rapt attention. I'm open to questions, and if there are no questions, I think we can call it a day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paul. Please, can we have some emojis, please? Say big thank you. I don't see any emojis. Okay, yes. Thank you. We appreciate you. Yeah. Any questions? Remember, I said you could use the Q&A. Because the chat platform is not working, or you can unmute and speak. With Mr. Paul has dropped some links on the WhatsApp platform. Are we all on this WhatsApp platform? Thank you, John. John is giving round. Have we all joined the platform, the WhatsApp platform? Emmanuel, John, Olumide, Subain, are you all on the WhatsApp platform? Okay, and you all have the fabric environment, set up your fabric environment. Yeah, can you raise your hand if you are in the WhatsApp platform? Okay.
Maybe you help us by putting
If
the
you're
link
not
on
there,
chat. We're not really sure of the platform. I said you will do us well by putting the link on